TitleMatchNetwork.com.
How nervous was Vince McMahon going into the first WrestleMania?
I would have to say that Vince McMahon knew exactly what he was in for. If this thing failed, it would be all over. He was rolling the dice like you wouldn't believe. Got to remember, we didn't have 40 or 50 million pay-per-view, addressable pay-per-view homes back then. The first WrestleMania, there probably was no more than a total of 3 million cable homes in the whole country.
Right.
It was done by closed-circuit TV in little theaters and small venues, but it worked. And, of course, WrestleMania 1 changed the landscape of professional wrestling forever.
Whose concept? Who was the person who actually invented the concept of WrestleMania? Was it Vince? I heard Roddy Piper claim that he was part of it.
I heard David Schultz came up with the name. Is that true? Dr.
That I wouldn't know. I would give credit to a lot of people, though. But
Right.
since Vince was in charge,
It was Vince.
I think he was kind of the mastermind and creator of that event.
Was it true that Jimmy Snuka was being planned to be in that main event, but then he was kind of, for his troubles and whatever happened with in Allentown, that's why he wasn't in the main event, and that's why he was the second?
Well, I don't know if it was the Allentown incident or not, but Jimmy Superfly Snuka at one time, I think, had a spot in that main event. The only thing is that Jimmy was having so many personal problems, I think, that are well documented. His use of drugs, the fact that the people in the organization couldn't truly count on him because they thought he was operating under the influence of too much coke or whatever they did. Jimmy is a great performer, no question about it. Who made the decision? I couldn't even tell you today. I've got to assume it wasn't Howard Finkel, so I've got to believe that maybe Vince made that call.
In that first WrestleMania main event, was there a contingency plan with Ordnorff, Piper, and Hogan in case Mr. T wasn't kind of go along with the script or try to make his own?
Mr. T was a very tough guy to get along with. Liberace was a pro. Liberace came dressed. He had on a piano watch. He was very articulate. Mr. T, I remember we were down at the Helmsley Palace in Midtown Manhattan, and Mr. T says, "Pity the fool, I got to get my head straight. I'm going out in the limo. I'm going to go for a ride." Well, hell, he missed the press conference. You know, and he was getting big money.
You were the first person ever to sing the national anthem at WrestleMania. Whose idea was that?
I did that by default. I think originally that they had a major name that was going to come in and sing the national anthem. That major name might have partied a little bit with Jimmy Snuka because the long and the short at the 11th hour was a no-show. And as I told Vince, hey, I can do this if we're not going to start a WWE event without having our national anthem played or sang. So we did it. Probably not my best effort, but better than nothing. As Sheik would say, better than nothing.
How did life change for you when WWF blew up and got national exposure?
Well, it was just we were kind of operating in a haze. I couldn't believe it because we did those ongoing things before WrestleMania 1. Excuse me.
Sure.
If you don't mind. Imported from Russia. Where were we? Before WrestleMania. The MTV series. The War to Settle the Score. The Brawl to Settle It All. The Cyndi Lauper. All of the mainstream people. My God, it was fun. I was at Madison Square Garden. And all of a sudden, Piper either slammed Dave Wolf or somebody. And here's Danny DeVito. Here's Andy Warhol. Here's Joe Piscopo. Here's a ton of folks coming in, and I'm talking to them about our product.
Right.
And they are big marks. It was really exciting. It was a very, very exciting time of my life.
When did it become apparent that to you and the boys that Vince was expanding nationally? Was it around that time period?
Instantaneously.
Right.
Even before Terry officially made the move. When I say Terry, Hulk Hogan made the move. I knew that something was going on, and already I had been in conversation with Pat Patterson, and Vince had called inquiring if I'd be interested. I dismissed it at first, number one, because of the logistics. Most of Vince's production was done here in Allentown, Pennsylvania, Hamburg, Pennsylvania, these small venues. And I had a business to watch out for, which I could do if I worked 1 day a week.
Right.
But he cut a deal with me saying that initially I would be working 3 days every 3 weeks, and that would be it. So I kind of justified, at least to myself, rationalizing that I could certainly take 3 days every 3 weeks and basically triple my salary. Here, greed, up in the air.
So you basically wound up in the WWF after that offer?
I did indeed. I started in December of 1983. We did wrestling at the Chase out in St. Louis, and it was a little different ball game because we were in the tuxedos back then.
Right.
You probably remember I was always associated with a tuxedo.
Huh. When did you realize that the WWF was now ingrained as part of pop culture?
That happened with the Rock and Wrestling connection, because MTV was, very much a happening thing there in the early stages of cable television, and we kind of fit right in. WWF was there, front and center, part of it all, and collectively, they made pop cultural history, if you will.
I guess, what were the differences when you first started in a typical day for TV for Vince as compared to Vern?
Oh boy! Well, the energy was a little different, but not that much, I guess. I would do interviews usually on Saturdays for Vern Gagne, and then when I left the TV station, went into the advertising business, we moved that into the week so it wouldn't interfere with the weekend house shows, and we did tape the shows as opposed to running them live. Vince, everything was so measured, it was organized. You had all the information. You weren't having people writing it down on a bar napkin. It was there very clear cut what you needed to do. And you had to get interviews from Butch Reed, or you had to get from Rene Goulet or whoever it happened to be back in the old days. These guys are going to be working with each other. We need to get both sides of the story. Sometimes they'd even do back-to-back interviews.
Right.
But it was all very calculated, and as I said, measured. This guy was organized. Vern was not organized, and that's not a knock on him. It's just that he could do it and get away with it.
Right. What were your initial thoughts upon meeting Vince McMahon? What were your initial impressions?
Mr.?
Yeah, Vince Jr.
Oh, very favorable. I talked to him so often. We had not met in person, but sat down. He's a very personable guy. He wasn't as guarded back then as he is today. A lot of people have betrayed Vince. They've stuck it to him. So I think he's kind of, arm's length. But in the early days, it wasn't like that. We had a lot of fun together, partied a lot, worked hard. But of course, we were working, 15, 16-hour days all over the country.
Right.
And that build up to WrestleMania was absolutely a grueling 6 months, because it had to work. If it didn't work, probably was all over.
A lot of people said that was the big gamble of WrestleMania 1.
Oh, no question. This guy has got to have very big cajoons to be able to do that. It's all or nothing. Vince was very approachable. I could call him at the office if I were out on the road. He would take my call. Still to this day, I have his home telephone number. Not that I would bother him at home unless it was something very important. But Vince is very approachable. Probably a little less so today than he was 20 years ago, but nonetheless, he still is accessible.
How did Vince change over time with the success of WWF at the time period?
Well, he knew he didn't have all the answers. Vince was not a marketing guy. He was not a legal guy. The way he changed is he surrounded himself with the best people from the financial world, from the legal world. I never negotiated my contracts after a while directly with Vince. I would do it with somebody else from the office. And today, it's done by the legal people. I'm sure they pass it by Vince. Vince says, take care of this guy. Or here's what I think would be a real number we should pay this guy. But all of the work is done by the legal beagles, our favorite people.
TitleMatchNetwork.com